Hey y'all, I'm Dr. K. I spent years studying to become a monk, but wound up becoming a psychiatrist. And today I want to teach you about how to keep your motivation from leaking away. In the society that we live in today, we oftentimes think that introverts are at a disadvantage. And a lot of the introverts that I've worked with struggle to try to become extroverts. But the cool thing about this is that they actually have a very natural advantage at sort of cultivating motivation. And we're going to teach you that principle today. If you're ready to take the next step on your mental health journey, check out Dr. K's guide. It's an immersive resource that distills over 20 years of my experience laid out in a way that is tailored to your needs. So if you're ready to better understand your mind and take control of it, check out the link in the description below. If we want to understand how to cultivate motivation, we're actually going to start in India. So I was studying with a tantric guru who initiated me into a secret mantra or mantra. And one of the key things that they sort of did when they initiated me is they said, keep this secret. And they said that if you ever tell anyone what your mantra is, the power of the mantra will diminish. But as you keep chanting it and you sort of cultivate the mantra within you, its power will grow and you will start to see a lot of material success and spiritual success. So at the time, I was failing out of college, had like less than a 2.0 GPA, had no money at all. And over time, I sort of noticed that I kind of became more and more successful. And even today, I wonder about whether that mantra was actually responsible for this. For the record, I still chant the mantra today, and I haven't really told anyone what it is. So whether the mantra is real or whether I'm harnessing the energies of the universe, whatever, today what I'm going to share with you is that principle translated into science, because this is actually scientifically true as well. So if we look at doing therapy with people who are traumatized, what we sort of discover is that if someone has been traumatized, like let's say they were abused, they carry that trauma within them. And what we know clinically is if we can get them to vent that trauma, the energy within diminishes. So as someone goes to psychotherapy and as they talk about their trauma, essentially there's stuff that's stored in here which gets vented out. And as we vent our negative emotions, as we talk about that trauma, as we're honest and authentic, and as our therapist creates a non-judgmental space where they're compassionate with us and we can share our shame and our negative emotions, what starts to happen to the traumatic individuals? That shame and that negativity that used to control their life stops controlling their life. This is literally the evidence-based approach of psychotherapy. That what psychotherapy tries to do is take negativity within you and have you vocalize it externally. And when you vocalize it externally, the power of it diminishes. So what does that have to do with a mantra? So a mantra is actually the exact opposite. So in a mantra, what we're doing is we're cultivating something positive, but we are not venting it at all. Right? So all we're doing is compounding that internal energy that's positive in nature. And then theoretically, it starts to make positive changes in our life. So what does this have to do with motivation leaking out? So I want y'all to pay attention to the people around you. And especially if you look at things like social media, what you'll have is these like entrepreneur bros, right? Who are like always talking about what they're going to do. I'm going to start a company. I'm a Sigma grind set. I'm a passive income. I'm going to do this. 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 And why are those people like posting so much on social media, right? Like on the flip side, if we actually look at successful entrepreneurs, they may have like a social media strategy, but they're not out there like posting all their random crap. The people who are actually starting and running successful companies aren't talking about it all the time. And what this sort of leads into is this core principle that when you talk about something, you will end up diminishing your internal energy. And there's more scientific evidence to kind of back this up. So when I was like a kid, like I was like 17 years old, I would tell people I wanted to become a doctor. And then they would get impressed by that, right? It's kind of bizarre. It's like if you tell people when you're 16, like, yeah, I'm going to be a doctor one day. And everyone's like, oh my God, you're going to be a doctor. Look at you. You're so great. And so what we sort of discover is that when you talk about what you're going to do, you actually get a positive reinforcement externally. So people are like impressed with what you're going to do. And then something really subtle happens. The moment that you get a reward by talking about something, what are you actually reinforcing? The first is that you're reinforcing that talking about stuff gets you a reward. And the second thing is that you're getting the reward without actually doing anything. So what ends up happening is as you talk about stuff, your motivation to actually follow through starts to leak away. And you may have also seen this like in gaming, right? There are people who are like posting about theory crafting and like, yeah, like I'm so good at this game and I'm going to do this and I'm getting into arguments with you. I'm spending all my time and energy like on the internet. And they're like 1v1 me, noob, like I'm going to crush you, right? If you like disagree with them, they get like all hyped up and they're like, yeah, I'm going to destroy you and I'm so good. And the people who can actually crush you 1v1 are the ones who are playing the game instead of posting about it on Reddit. And so this is a really, really common principle that we see at play, which is that the more that you vent what you're going to do, the less motivated and successful you will become. And so this is the cool thing is if you're an introvert, you're less inclined to talk to people about what you do. And this is precisely why I think that the introvert entrepreneurs that I work with are so successful. Because when they have that internal energy, they're just storing it internally and they're using it to drive actions instead of language. So the last piece of kind of scientific evidence about this that I'm going to share with y'all is a discovery that Freud actually made. So what Freud sort of discovered is that language can be a substitute for action. And this may sound really weird because we sort of think about language and action as like not being tied together. And I may have hopefully given you like an argument to think that these two things are tied together, but this is what's really interesting is that the two are intrinsically tied together. And so if we sort of think about, if I'm grief processing and I didn't get a chance to tell someone that I loved them before they passed away, I can still go to their grave and talk to them then. I can share with them, I wish I could have done this with you. I wish I could have done this with you. I wish I could have done this with you. And we don't actually have to do those things. Somehow talking about the thing serves as a substitute for action. And this is a discovery that Freud made, which we sort of borne out in lots of studies on psychotherapy. That language and action are intrinsically linked. And what the yogis sort of figured out is that both of these things come from the same pool of energy, which is precisely why you have two kinds of people in life. You have the talkers and you have the doers, right? You have the entrepreneurs who are out there running companies, and then you have the professors of entrepreneurship who are teaching courses and talking all day about starting companies. Now, they still serve a valuable purpose, and you could even argue that this is the camp that I fall into because I'm talking to you now, right? But it's really fascinating because we have so many sources that suggest to us that language and action are intrinsically tied. So what does this mean for you? What this means for you is, first of all, pay attention to what you say. How often do you talk to people about what you want to do? And what is the relationship between talking to people about what you want to do? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. I have this dream. I have this fantasy. I have this hope. And we go on articulating it all the time. And the more that you talk, what actually happens to your actions? The second thing that I want you to do is to think a little bit about when you have actually done stuff. How much did you talk to people about it before you did it? Chances are that there is an inverse correlation between talking about something and doing something. You woke up one day and you just started going to the gym instead of talking to 1,000 people about how you want to go to the gym and how you're researching going to the gym and how you're going to go to the gym one day, right? So that's the second thing to pay attention to. And the third thing that you need to do is shut the hell up, especially on social media. So when we think about social media, we think about all the negative effects of things like doom scrolling. But if you post a lot of crap on social media instead of doing it, or talk to people about what your hopes and dreams are, literally all you need to do is shut the hell up. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't talk to people if there's a particular goal in mind, and we'll talk about that in a second. But what I really want y'all to do is, if you have a particular goal, do not tell a soul. If you want to write a book, do not tell anyone that you're writing a book. Keep that energy within you. Don't vent a single ounce of it. Don't vent a single milliliter of that energy. If you have a goal, let it compound within you. Now, the last thing to consider is, okay, but what about talking to people? What about things like journaling? So this is the other thing to keep in mind. If you want to vent something, you need to re-internalize it. So if you journal, you sure as hell better read the journal afterward, because the point of journaling is to vent that energy. This is why as psychotherapists and psychiatrists, we tell patients to journal, right? So you get that crap out on the page and then you're done with it. It's out of you. So if you're journaling about positive stuff, you absolutely need to read it again to try to bring that stuff back, okay? And even when it comes to mantra, you can listen to mantras being chanted for some amount of the effect, which is like a big part of spiritual traditions. So if you're going to vent something, you better re-internalize it. And the second thing that a lot of people may wonder is like, okay, but how am I supposed to keep this secret forever? You can absolutely talk to people, but this is where you have to be very intentional about the scope and length of who you're going to talk to and how much you're going to talk to people about it. And this is something that I've learned at HG. The more random ass meetings that I have where there's a circle jerk of like, yeah, we want to do this and we want to do this. And like, there are people that I meet with that like have no idea what they're doing, but they're just like talking about all these ideas. And I used to engage in those conversations too. It's like, hey, let's get together and like talk about what we want to build and use AI and use VR and do all this digital mental health crap and gamification. And the more people that like, they're just talking about random crap, they don't actually do anything. So now when I have a conversation, I am engaging in a very scoped conversation. I'm talking to this person about this thing for this purpose. I try to keep the conversation at a minimum, and in the back of my mind, I know that every word I say in this conversation is going to deplete my motivation. So the conversation comes at a cost. And the more that you start to realize that, your communications will be focused. Now, the only time I'm going to meet with people and talk to people is when the benefit is clear and outweighs the cost of venting my motivation. So if y'all find that your motivation is leaking away, you should use this tantric principle of keeping the positive stuff within you. Let it compound, let it build up, let that pressure of positivity build up, and then channel it into action instead of words. And on the flip side, recognize that there is a shared pool of energy between talk and action, which is precisely why there are talkers or doers. You never have both. And this is why if you just simply stop talking, which is naturally what introverts want to do, lean into that, right? And the less you talk, the more you will be able to accomplish.